give me a favorite boot that you make and maybe a favorite boot or shoe from somebody else.
Ooh, okay. Um, and we didn't prep for this, so this is the first thing that comes to mind. For something that we make, I would probably say the Edward boot, just being a plain toe boot, and it's very simple. Um, and then with the same issue, it's almost the same thing, whether it's a boot, loafer, or shoe. The last few years, I'm just gravitating towards um, suede. So as long as it's suede, I'll take it. So I think a good example of that would be our Edward boot in black suede. Um, Black is super versatile, and that'd be probably something. And it's honestly just because of the way that it feels. It's just comfortable, especially if you're changing footwear a lot. It's I find it somewhat honestly somewhat annoying to like put on like a leather that's kind of stiff or something. I mean, and some of them I really like the way they look, but you have to kind of go through that whole process of not even like the fit issue of breaking it in, but just like the leather itself having to break it in, and your shin and how stiff the tongue is, everything else, especially if the tongue is lined and everything, just creates a whole another variable there. A favorite boot from someone else. Um, let's see, off the top of my head, I won't choose an Alden model. That'll be too easy. Um, I would say I had a perf cap toe from Viberg not long ago that I really liked, and it was more or less just because the way the pattern, the way that that thing is designed, it's just very, very clear that it's a Viberg pattern. Just like the shapes, as soon as you lace it up from like the top of the eyelets uh, down to the bottom, the way that it laces up and kind of the angles and also the cap, the way that that's done, uh, it, you know, they're one of those brands that's just kind of each product they come out with, you could pretty much go like, okay, yeah, I know which one that is. I know which brand that is. Um, so yeah, that was also a little bit of a layup, but I think that's one thing that kind of stands out to me about their patterns is like whether you're going for the classic service boot or some version of a cap toe or something. As soon as you kind of put it on and look down, you're like, oh, that's a Vibrant pattern, pretty much, right away.
Let me
Um,
give you a
so
quick
yeah,
follow up. What do you
yeah.
what do you think that you might be seeing as a shoemaker that other people may not be seeing in that Viberg?
Well, I would just say that they're one of those brands that whoever's doing the pattern, they kind of carry a similar feel from one pattern to the next. So I think IROs and things like that, and for example, ours, a lot of the time it's also out of just like simplicity. If you have something that works, which I'm not saying they're doing this because I don't know, but um, a lot of times if you have something that works, you carry that over, whether it's a standard or the shape, however that is, especially depending on who that model is, the person who's wear testing the shoes. A lot of times it will be the person doing the pattern. You find one thing that kind of works. It's kind of rare to deviate too much from that because that'd just be kind of tricky. But so for our patterns, like you literally have like one pattern that we know that it has like 20 millimeters from one IRO to the other side of the IRO, so that spacing. But then we know people have a higher instep, they might struggle with that pattern. So like we're like, well, this other boot we come up with is very, very similar as far as the way it laces up, but it actually comes together a little bit closer. So for people who have a higher instep, it's a good option. And for people who have a lower instep, this one's good because maybe they won't be touching when they lace it up tight, at the top. So yeah, it's just kind of like that. If you look at something enough, you're kind of like, oh, they have a certain, you know, flair to it, or just a certain aesthetic that kind of carries over from pattern to pattern. Um, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, makes sense. I like that. I have a high end step, so it's valuable for me to know.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Nick, I'm going to ask you a similar question, but I don't know if you have any non-Horween footwear, but give me a favorite Horween one and favorite Non-Horween?
I don't think I do. I mean, not outside of like sneakers.
I was gonna say I know you're a big. You used to be a big Yeezy fan.
That was a comfort-driven thing, and then things happened, and I'm not so much of a. I don't, those are not. Those are no longer in the rotation.
Things happen.
Things happen. People change. Yeah. So that's how. I mean, I was just listening to Wyatt and actually like thinking about what my answer was going to be, but I have so many things, leather things at this point, that I often find myself liking stuff that because it pops up and it's more novel. So because I haven't worn, I mean, I have a very flat, wide foot. So there are a lot of things out there that I like the look of a lot that I try to wear that just don't work for me. So I end up sort of going back to the same like group of things all the time. And I know why I was just talking about it, but for whatever reason, that one Viberg glass fits me well. So I end up going back to that because for fit mostly, but
The 110 last that
yeah, the one they don't make anything out of anymore. They don't use
makes
anymore.
Brett.
Yeah, but favorite. I mean, I've got those Crockett and Jones Harlex in dark cognac, shell cordovan that I've been wearing quite a bit, and those are pretty awesome because they fit me. They fit me well. I mean, they're like a very impressive tall shell cordovan boot, but they also fit well, and they're surprisingly comfortable. Like I wore them to the thing in Brooklyn. I walked around for 3 full days and I was fine in them, which is I think pretty unusual for a dress shoe like that. But similarly, I have a pair of Carmina boots that don't look, they're sort of like in the same family, and I think they're equally as beautiful, but they're not comfortable, so I just don't wear them. But so I'm answering without answering, I guess is the answer. But and then so for again, I don't have any I don't have any of our stuff. It's not. I guess if I was going to do something that was not ours, I would go. It would be for some refined stead suede product in like a loafer or just like a plain toe. Just because I think that's something that they do really really well. CF Stead in the UK. I mean, they're known for their suedes, and they have a range of those. So I probably would go there because I think it's a product I appreciate. I do have a backpack that has Stead suede on the bottom of it. I think that's as close as I can get to something that's not. And I only have it because it's from them, and I know and I appreciate them. So
Nice, man.
how about you, Phil? What's on your what are your picks?
Can I add to that, Phil, on Nick's point of the Steve said? So I just went for the first time to Leeds to visit those guys and see the tannery, but also kind of group it with the Super Trunk show in London. And Crockett and Jones, probably one of my favorite loafers that I've worn that, over the last few years. It's an unlined tassel loafer from them. It's just unbelievable. And I'm assuming, actually, I don't know this, but I'm assuming it's their Janus calf. But that shoe is incredible, and it's just without the lining, but then also that last has it's kind of bizarre because you put it on, you're just expecting some normal loafer last, but it has a very noticeable amount of arch support. So much so that I've never really felt it before in a loafer before. Just one of my favorite shoes, period. And just I never really worn anything like it. So really really cool shoe.
We should take a note and talk about your visit to Stead a little bit later. But continuing on the topic, like Nick I'm so impressed with that you could pick a favorite, Wyatt, because I kind of don't have the dream everything footwear. There's sort of components of individual footwear that I like that I wish were all somehow Frankenstein together. The one that comes to mind for me, and I haven't worn them in a while because I've really beat the snot out of them, but are our mutual friend George from Oak Street, when he first started the brand, I bought a pair of boat shoes from him in Chrome Excel. And they were honestly like a little too small for me to begin with. And I would wear them all the time. And this online Chrome Excel is just so it's the most comfortable thing possible. I would wear them. I remember wearing them, helping a friend move over a decade ago in the rain. So they were soaking wet and I'm walking and I'm moving stuff. And I don't know, there's some of the most inappropriate moving shoes, but now they're really, really comfortable.
They're probably more comfortable after that.
Oh yeah, it was outrageous. They're so, but they don't look great anymore. They like really look like somebody wore them on a boat for decades. And like,
They probably look great.
I have them. You know, ironically about those, it's sometimes people criticize some of the Ashland products for not being hand stitched. These boat shoes are a really good example because the hand stitching has actually failed before the machine stitching on them, which is kind of fascinating.
But people are criticizing you for not hand stitching.
Like some people, like
Okay.
so for us, like this is such a divergence. So maybe we come back to this, but we guarantee both of them. We just charge more for the hand stitching, and I always wanted the products to be more about the material, more about the leather than the stitching. But the hand stitching is thicker thread that cannot be fed through a traditional sewing machine. So the only way to get this really bold, chunky thread, and there's sort of it's faded a little bit, but there's been a hype around this called Ritza brand tiger thread. That's sort of, they make different shapes of the thread, but you can really see the weave in the thread, and it's waxed and it's really thick and bold. So people that like this sort of framed out chunky thread aesthetic, you can only get that from the hand stitching. So we will do it. We will also charge more for it. It's just a lot of labor. But anyways, we sometimes get criticized because I think Hermes does a really good job of like telling their story about how everything's hand stitched. And that's their value prop with all the traditional methods. We do it too, but I think honestly, I think a machine stitch is more refined, and I like it. I think it makes it more about the leather, which is what we're about. We're all about the leather at Ashland. So thanks for the tangent, Nick. But so I like my Oak Street boat shoes. I like, and since I'm also a Horween shill, I'll make myself pick a non-Horween thing too. I wanted to tie in some other thoughts. So I have some Vibergs as well that I like in those 110 lasts that Nick also has that are great, and they sucked for 6 months. It's because everything was just so firm and so thick. It took a long time to break in, and to their credit, the boots came with a card that said to expect that. I would say those are now my go-tos just because I noticed that the firmness has mellowed out, but also like makes me less tired standing around. So I did a recent like pop-up event where I had to be on my feet all day and felt fine after wearing those. So that was an experience. I really want, and why, you could maybe tell me why you can't do this, but I really want like an online shell boot. And I've just been told it's like really difficult to make that. Oh, look, Nick, that's what I'm talking about? Oh, you're muted. Idiot.
God damn it! Because I can see like my Zoom keeps like I'm just like green the whole time because there's like so much road noise outside my office here. But anyway, this is the 110. I just thought I'm actually wearing. Is it gonna focus where I want it to focus?
Yeah, you're good.
Maybe. Yeah.
They're awesome.
Like black
sure.
Chrome Excel worn them like so much, but
One brown.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So for my Vibergs, they have a day night bottom, and I kind of wish they had a leather sole bottom. And I say that having worn through a few leather soles and haven't recrafted them yet. So it's just kind of I'm like too lazy or too busy to get them redone. So I kind of wish those had a leather bottom. I don't know. It's like everything I have is like 90% of the way there that I love, and then there's like one thing I wish I could change. Like I love the way the Alden Roy boot. I love the way they look. I don't necessarily love the crepe sole so much anymore. It's like a little too squishy, but like those were also sized a little bit too small for me, and now they're mega comfortable because the Chrome XLs just really wanted to form around me. So like I said, like I don't have like I haven't found my dream. And then the Horween chill part. So Wyatt, I just bought from your sale those sneakers, and is it the Anime calf on the black sneakers?
It's actually an Incus leather from Italy.
Incas.
Yeah.
I like it. It's really like tight. I mean, it's calf, so it's like kind of exactly what you expect out of calf. The criticism I'll have there is like it's almost like it feels like it's trying to be a little too dressy in a sneaker. So it's a hybrid, right? So, but I don't know if that's a
Sure.
criticism either because it's just
Right.
it's like what it is. But I've really liked that leather on those shoes too. But maybe we want to go like continuing on the favorites part, and this would be so great to trigger Nick, but we should just talk about favorite and least favorite leathers. Maybe we do like a Horween favorite and least favorite, and maybe a non-Horween one. I'll just preview it. It's like I don't have a ton of experience with like negativity from non-Horween stuff, just because I haven't tried so many. But it'd be good to talk to you guys about it. What do you think? What favorites, non-favorites, Horween and non-Horween?
So I would say that one thing, for example, and of course, um, the one I like the most and wear the most is by far just the shell. But from a different point of view here, so a guy who works, helping um, in the warehouse and office, kind of fulfillment. He's basically our warehouse manager. His name's Mike, and he actually visited Horween with me my last trip there, and get to check out. John gave him the whole tour and everything else, so he was super psyched because he's all into leather and basically has gotten into this. Went down the YouTube thing, I think probably 4 or 5 years ago before starting to work with us. But he got a pair of shell shoes from us, and he's got the black marbled brass boot from us as well. And he's had a lot of whatever leather suede in the past, and his one thing that he just came back with, he was just so surprised at how it really it molds and forms a little bit easier than he thought it would have. Especially like an initial feeling, maybe if it's lined or something, it feels like it's going to be a little more like a stiff like temperament, but it actually changes very very quickly. It almost feels like calf out of the box, but I mean that's just not the way that it forms over time. It just becomes one of the most, and I started this thing talking about boots, and I should have, realized that, hey, I could have mentioned something other than boots because I don't wear boots. I don't really like boots, but uh, it would have been
Yeah,
loafers.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't pick loafer as a favorite. Yeah.
Well, it is, yeah, because I really don't really wear boots, and if I do, that's why I wear the suedes, so they don't suck so much. But you know, that's the thing with like a loafer. I feel like a loafer pattern is very good to test leather from like a standpoint of whether it's forgiving or not, or how it's going to react. Just because, I mean, there is no give, right? I mean, you don't have laces and everything to kind of work with it, whether it's a little small or a little big out of the box. And so you'll know kind of right away if you get an article, for example, some of these French calf in the past that we've used, if you put on a loafer that's maybe a little bit too small, I mean, it's absolutely miserable just because that French calf is pretty tough. It doesn't have as much, it's not as elastic, and so it doesn't have as much give. So it can be a pretty miserable feeling if it doesn't fit well. So yeah, shell for all of those reasons. It's actually a very very functional leather on top of not having having the rolls and stuff inside the creasing and everything else. But least favorite, yeah, I mean I don't really have one of those. I'd say from like a cutting perspective or something else, it's any. I'll just put any of the large bovine hides into that category. Can always kind of throw a wrench because every hide's different, every lot's different. But just have to be very, very careful. And depending on the patterns, some patterns it's like, hey, we can cut this draw on the quarters. We can, of course, cut it on tongues and stuff, but just kind of dealing with that side of it. Not that it's any more difficult than the next leather. Just it has its own way of being tricky, and so that'd be probably the main reason. Just say any of those bovine hides can be, any of the big sides and stuff, can take a little while to. I mean, even once the cutters are very good at what they're doing, it can still pop up after you cut the uppers and they end up not being used once it gets further down the line. But and then non-Horween, I would say, okay, so one of my least favorite, specifically because the cutting, is the article you just mentioned, Phil, Incus Parma. They're baby calves, so they're very small, full hides, and they're a nightmare to nest patterns and to be like consistent, especially if you're like, hey, we really want 200 pair, 300 pair of something. Getting that number right is impossible because you just have to order, an extra 10% or 15%. And maybe you'll have a lot of extra leather laying around. Maybe you will still have a shortage when you're done cutting, depending on how that lot is when it comes in, just because the hides are so small, you don't have as much room to play around with it, especially some of the bigger patterns, like a penny loafer that, it's actually that strip from the vamp is all the way around to the back. So it's basically the whole length of the shoe. So it's a big cutting die. So those are a pain. And it's like a very aniline leather as far as the draw on those baby calf are so prominent. And usually we'll have that draw kind of going from heel to toe, but I mean, every hide's completely different. So it gets very, very difficult to go like, is this going to be acceptable when the shoe is done? And of course, yeah, you're always kind of on that, that fine line, because you can see them, you will see them on the finished product, those, the lines on the hide. So those are tricky. And then probably one of my favorites, I'll say something that I've been wearing a lot recently is reverse kudu. And I think one reason that's a really cool hide is because, yeah, I mean, the suede itself, the suede side, it is very clean. And most people wouldn't know. They wouldn't know the difference if you're wearing, cow or calf suede. But it's a really heavy article, but it's like super, super soft. So same thing, you can line it, you can do it unlined, just super versatile leather that you can, I mean, it's just always very, very comfortable. If anything, it's a little tricky on loafers and things if you're doing them online, just because the shoe will fit completely different, and the lasting and everything else. It can have all these things pop up as far as, too much tension or not enough and all that, just because it is such a soft leather. It creates a whole other issue there. But for the final product, it's a great leather.
Before I jump to Nick, I noticed an email from you like last night, Wyatt, where you're selling the baby calf from Galloon. I'm imagining it's exactly the same cutting issues, right? With let me pull up your see if I can find it. Because they look beautiful. What did you call it? Shrunken calf.
Yeah.
You're having the same cutting issues on that? They look awesome.
You know what though? Honestly, because it does have that shrunken effect, and it has so much. I mean, it has so much character on the hides. I mean, you're cutting that on purpose, and so it's almost like if it had a print or something. So you get away with it, and being calf, everything else. At Galloon, just like a lot of these tanneries, like Nick's and stuff. I mean, if they know what you're going to do with it, they're going to help you trim to the best of their ability. And honestly, because that article has that grain structure all the way through, it makes it pretty easy because it hides just about anything. Even if it's like little growth marks or things like that, and I would say more or less, imperfections, it'll hide that much easier than, let's say, a smooth French calf or whatever that might be. They have to be clean. Even Chrome Excel, while it is a casual leather, you still want it to be clean. So there's nothing's going to hide a little marks. You have to cut around that stuff. Where like a print, or something that has a ton of character, you can cut, like the bison, for example. You can. It's just, yeah, you can, the usage is a little bit better on those, just because you can cut the majority of it.
How big are the shrunken calf? How big are those hides? Are they teeny tiny?
No, they're pretty good size. Definitely on the larger size. I mean, they'll probably start calling them kip, and that probably that same old story as far as, does this qualify as a calf or not? In one way, I guess you could look at it as being the full sides, just, or the full hides. Doesn't seem like the grain structure itself, it don't seem to have too much issue there, as far as getting that thicker hide with the looser grain structures. So it is on the smaller side, but I think even more so because he's basically shrinking it, during the tanning process. But yeah, nothing like the baby calf, or something that those are literally 12-foot hides, 10 foot full hides, where his, they're almost double that for a full hide.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, 10. Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I've noticed when you're talking about prints and textures, the prints especially, like a black printed leather is gonna hide everything. So as a tannery, it's like the best thing to sell, because you can put all your hide and allocate it into that. It's gonna cover every scar, every scratch, every bug bite.
That I'm gonna stop you, because that's not that. I think that is a little bit of a misconception, because there are actually some leathers, like on the tumbled stuff. The next time you're here, we can talk to Victor, the guy that's doing a lot of the development and finishing for us. And like sometimes black is actually harder, because you got this black value, and then the imperfections, like sometimes will pick up more shine, or like it's just like the way that it hits. So sometimes black for us, like in our, I understand why you say that, Phil. Like black for us in our building is more forgiving, because we use almost no pigments on anything except for black, because you have to use a pigment or a solid to get like a true jet black. So we put pigment or solids in the finishing materials when we do black. So we get a little extra forgiveness there, especially on something like Chrome Excel, because you have to do it. But if you were going to do like an aniline, like a more aniline black or semi-aniline black, and you were trying to get that true drum dyed color, in coloring before you started to finish it, sometimes it actually makes it more pronounced. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
Black doesn't always necessarily mean like, oh, put all the bad stuff into black. I mean, it definitely hides color variation for sure.
Bad is a weird word. Bad is a weird word to qualify that with. But thank you for challenging me.
Yeah.
Let me challenge you back. If you were to cover up scars and scratches, would you put it into a different color?
It depends on the article. It depends on if it's waxed. Like a Dublin, like Dublin in black tends to hide more than if like an English tan, because when you wax it, like it actually, the scars and the scratches get darker than the rest of it, so like it makes them even more pronounced. So it depends on the article and the color. I mean, it really, if you want to hide something, like if you really are trying to hide, like if you get something that's like, what are we going to do with this? I mean, you
Send it to Grandstone.
Yeah, exactly. You don't do anything to it, and you just put it in a box and send it right to Grandstone. No, you would. I mean, I'm not saying this is what we do, but as a tanner, you would sand it, and then you would build like a basically a new surface on top of it, and probably
then print it,
put some sort of texture into it, and then do a little bit more finishing over the top of that, because then you create something that looks, at least initially, natural. But for us, it's more like we're considering what product does it fit into. So something like football, like if there are like little like freckles on it, that's fine, because even though football is a much more aniline product than maybe people would think, the texture lends itself to covering up those like freckles. But for long scratches, like that's a real problem, because it accentuates those, and the pattern is such and the performance of the product is such that that creates a problem. So we need to, that's something that that's our job as a tanner to make sure we're putting the right hides into the right places. And then, in footwear, something like Chrome XL, like those freckles are not okay. Like they tend to be a little bit more insidious and they're kind of harder to see, especially when you get towards the end. So we don't want to put those in because we don't want those cut into a product. The longer scratches, while problematic, or that they can be problematic because they're bigger, they're easy to see. And for something like a shoe, like you have more smaller pieces and you have at least a chance at cutting around that stuff, especially if you can see it, or cutting it into a place that makes sense. So not to say that any of the cosmetic challenges are better or worse or should be all in one place or the other, but there's definitely consideration that happens way before we even are making it into anything about what's going on and how we're going to cover it up or how we're going to mitigate it, I guess is better.
Right.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. That honestly, though, for cutting shoes, my experience would be that scars that would be the best imperfection to kind of work around and to have, because it's right there in front of you, and it's not one of those that you're going to accidentally cut on a vamp and then last it and go, oh damn, you're just not really going to have that issue. And usually any of the hides that, depending on the grades you're getting and what most of these brands are buying, it's just never going to be just full of scars, right? So you just work around them a little bit going in, but it's all the other stuff. It seems like the draw and everything else that's a little bit tougher just because there's a lot of it, and you have to cut directionally to kind of make sure that, because of what it does show, that it's just not kind of like mismatch in pairs and everything else. For like a scar is like, yeah, just stay clear. You stay clear, and the whole hide shouldn't be like that, and you're kind of good to go. Same thing with loose grains. Sometimes it's hard to tell, right? It's hard to tell, especially if you just lay it on a table. It's hard to know exactly how it'll break, especially kind of left-right vamps. Even sometimes it's like, well, it's not necessarily loose grain, just one broke worse than the other, and it can be problematic depending on who the customer is. But yeah, the scars for sure is just like, yeah, cut around it and good to go.
I think the leather that you get from Nick that has scars, they might feel like the good types of defects to get. They're never going to send you the one. I guess the perspective I want to share with you is there can be a lot of scars. And it's not, there's like zero cutability.
Sure.
So as a tannery, they will have to affect the grain somehow to quote unquote hide it. But that's what I was saying earlier, Nick, is like, I like that stuff. Honestly, like for me, it's just difficult to sell because you can only make one of them and you have to take a photo of that exact one and then list it. I think those things look awesome. But for Wyatt, you're not going to make 10 pairs or even 2 pairs that look alike that have those same sort of markings. It's a challenge.
Yeah, that's definitely the challenge, and not when you're selling online, especially, and you're sending it, and you don't really know the tolerance or the education, product knowledge, I guess is a better way to say it, level of the person that's on the receiving end of it. And like that's something that I really only know about from hearing from people like Wyatt, and I can't even imagine like the customer service lift, like what's that's like, and getting things back, and sort of the people taking rulers to measuring stitches per inch and being like, well, this one's off by 2 millimeters, so I'm going to send these back. It's like, it is a natural product that is largely affected by the people that are making it by hand. So it's like it's gonna be a little different. But the scratches part of it and like the variation part of it. I mean, because I have plenty of shoes that have all kinds of stuff going on. Because a lot, like if we have a customer and like they make some cool product, I'm like, well, can I buy a pair of your seconds? Like I like that stuff. Like just give me a pair that you can't, or give me a pair. Let me buy a pair that you can't sell. Because I like that when you get a product that has like a scratch on it or a healed scratch, or is maybe one's a little different than the other. I mean, like that's like those are like there's no other pair of shoes like that. Like those are that's what makes them like uniquely yours, and then you're going to put your own wear on them, and that's going to even further sort of personalize that item. So that's just the way I look at it. I think it's a sort of maybe a more holistic, wholesome, convenient. convenient for me way to look at things, but that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and I mean for our customer service, so Kim, she does a lot of our emails, and definitely the majority. Um, the hardest part for her sometimes is you will have someone who's just genuinely not sure, and they're just posing the question, asking like, "Hey, is this okay?" But of course, people are just like shooting an email from their iPhone or whatever they're doing sometimes, and so it's very hard to know. And she just gets them all day as far as like a range of questions. You know, is this person asking, or I mean, then you have the other side of someone who's just like, I'm sending these back to you, send me a replacement next day, today, um, without issue one, two, three. Um, and so, but then there's everything in the middle of that too. And so, yeah, you try to, yeah, but yeah, that's a lot of that.
I can echo that. I think
Yeah.
as a brand, you love a customer when they ask you like, "Hey, is this normal?" And then if you say yes, you still give them the opportunity to be like, "Hey, it is normal, but if you don't like it, send it back. We'll work with you." So, but you'd much rather have the conversation, right? And try to help. Like I'm gonna talk for you, but we're legitimately trying to help you get the right thing.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, honestly, that is a conversation, and honestly, an aspect of that customer service conversation that's pretty unique, because in the warehouse, when someone's inspecting something and shipping it, the last little bit I'll leave them with is like, even if I'm sitting here telling you this is acceptable, if you look at it and you think it doesn't look right, we get shoes all the time that someone sends back just because they don't like it. They don't even reach out though, right? And so they just send it back just because they don't like it, which that's their right to do so. So it's also like, it also, not even from a performance standpoint, or hey, is this like a quote unquote, is this past the acceptance rate for loose grain? It's almost just like, yeah, but at the end of the day, whether we say it's acceptable, does it look right? And if someone doesn't like it, they can just send it back. And to your point, even if it's completely acceptable on our end, I mean, someone still might look at it and go, well, I don't like it, so I'm
Right.
out. And so kind of like keeping that last little piece in mind, like, well, they can definitely just send it back and not reach out and ask, or anything like that too. So, um, which also just makes it a little bit tighter. You have to keep it a little bit tighter, otherwise you will get products back that, and you really won't even know because they wouldn't tell you why they sent it back. So.
Have you noticed the difference between the customers or the customer service aspect of your business now versus when you first started? I mean, are people more or less informed, or are the expectations changed, or I mean, sort of ignoring product mix, because I'm sure that has something to do with it. But I'm just curious if people are acting differently or have different ideas.
I think it's, generally speaking, the majority of those customers, those first few years, they were heavily more of like a forum audience. And so but I don't necessarily think that makes it easier, because some of them are very, very picky. You know, um, we could sometimes we'll end up sending, like, we'll go through, if we have 4 pair of an AD and this person had sent one back, I'll go back there and literally inspect all 4 of them, because they're looking for the most, specific details, and send it to them. And they're just like, yeah, well, but this one has this issue. And it's like, well, then unfortunately, that's the best one we had. I mean, mind you, all 4 pairs are absolutely a great product. But yeah, your SPI will be different on different boots. Your toe spring will be different, a millimeter or two in different boots. There will be bloom on half of our leathers. There will be, it's just the way that's going to go, on a perfectly good boot. So, but now as we're going into, maybe, we have customers who maybe it's their first welted pair of boots, or, I mean, we're just seeing this now more and more as kind of realization. It's just like, there's plenty of customers who just like, they might know like what Goodyear welted is a little bit or something, but honestly, they don't really care about the details. It's just like, yeah, I like the way it looks. And sometimes those are the easiest customers, because they're just like, oh no, I love this leather and get it. And as long as it fits right, then, but they honestly don't even care to get any more into the details. They're just like, no, I heard, it's got some good components, and yeah, it's like Goodyear welted, whatever that is, and give me sold if I have to. Yeah, I like it. And so I'd definitely just say it's a heavy mix. And so maybe at the beginning was a little bit more of the form people, but honestly, some of them are very tricky, and then some aren't. We'll have some customers that have 20 orders with us with 0 returns. We have some people with 10 orders that have kept 1 pair because of sizing. I mean, they'll order an 8.5D in a kudu and then 8.5D in a Chrome Excel and return 1 because they think it feels a little bit different in size because of the leather elasticity or something like that. And it's like, well, it could be, but wear it for like 30 minutes and you might be all right. Like they're all going to feel a little bit different. So, but there's no getting through to at the same time, that's their, they can kind of do that. But yeah, just a big range.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. So it sounds like as you grow your brand and are reaching new eyeballs that are less familiar, that type of consumer is less deep into the knowledge and might not have this similar Actually, it sounds like the expectations are lower, like as you get wider. That's interesting.
Maybe just realistic. It just sounds like realistic.
Yeah, for sure. And because sometimes it can backfire a little bit because like literally, like if there's like bloom on a tongue or something like that, they're like, hey, this thing's like dusty or whatever or something like that. So that can backfire a little bit, but at the same time, generally speaking, not too bad. Not too bad. Kind of someone who like hasn't gone down the rabbit hole and is like, yeah, I think Chrome Excel is, that's a combination tan, if I remember correctly. And during my last visit you're like, you've been to the tannery, sir? Like, well, actually, I flew there with my friend once. It's like, what? And they do like, work in insurance or something, and they just have a few pair of boots, but they've been to the tannery. So yeah, huge range.
Let me ask Nick. I think we may have done this before, but do you want to share favorite and non-favorite Horween stuff? Leather, just the articles themselves.
Sure. I mean, just like the regular OG Chrome Excel.
Don't be so excited about it.
I think.
Yeah, like I don't know, it's fine. Chrome Excel, I guess.
No, my favorite is just like the traditional Chrome Excel, because I think all of my real favorite shoes that I wear because they're comfortable or I like the way they look, or some combination of those. All of my most worn are Chrome Excel or some Chrome Excel derivative, like Wax Flesh or Marine Field shoe or regular Chrome Excel or woolly Chrome Excel. I mean, it's just like there's a pretty wide breadth. So I guess my one answer is like I like the whole product category because I think it's something that's uniquely us and something that we've made for a long time that I think we do a really good job at making. And it's a really good versatile product. Like you can get a pair of boat shoes in it, like you have, Phil, and you can beat the hell out of them and they'll look better. Or you can get something like a I don't know, like I just had it up.
A Nick's work boot, like monster of a boot, yeah.
Right, but I was thinking even the like the Edward boot, like you can get like the Edward boot in Chrome Excel, and if you maintain it a little bit more like a dress product, it's still a casual. It's not a calfskin, but you can still wear it, all day and walk around with it, and then brush it up and go out to dinner in it. I mean, I think it's a versatile product. So that's a very easy answer for me. Recently, I like Cypress a lot. I think that's a really interesting sort of new in quotes. Like it's a new combination of very tried and true methods. And so that product I think has a lot of potential because it's different enough from Chrome Excel, like what I just talked about. It's different enough in how it's made and how it'll age, but similar enough in that it still looks like something we made. So those are probably my two favorites. I think Chrome Excel is always the number one. Then Shell Cordovan is always a favorite, but then there's always a second one that sort of rotates in and out of my favor.
What do you hate?
What do I hate that we make?
Or what do I hate that it used to make?
I've done this before too.
Yep.
And every time I mention it, I'll mention it in front of my dad or in front of John Cullen, our sales guy. And they're like, well, it was great for what it was. And we made a product called Tempest, which we sold a bunch of for cowboy boots, but it was like an intentional, like the idea was sort of like a snuff suede kind of base, or just like a really simple base tannage. And then you put it into a buffing machine and like intentionally screw it up. So it gets like all cut up and torn up and stuff. And it has it but it does it in a consistent way. It's like consistently screwed up, but it's
It's a look.
not my favorite. But we did it in like pastels and like sort of like Easter egg colors, and it was just like it was not my thing. But there've been plenty of products that we've made too where I'm like, that's just not my thing, or like anything in white, anything that's pure white. I don't like it. Like we just can't keep it clean. But that's maybe a manufacturing or it is a manufacturing issue because our building is old and dirty. But and then favorite non-Horween product, the Sedgwick English bridle, I think is pretty great. We don't make anything that's quite like that. I mean, they tan it for a really long time. It's veg tanned. It's heavy. It's super expensive. And I think in the products that call for something like that, like a heavy waxed bridle leather, I think that it's as good an option as any that are out there. I've got some belts that are lined with it, which are just awesome. It's kind of like a crazy thing to line a belt with, but it makes a beautiful base for a shell cordovan belt, which is what I'm actually wearing right now. I've got a Sedgwick lined belt on, but yeah. So nice. I just another very sort of traditional product that I think and they don't make a lot of different stuff, but they do that really well, I think.
I'm going to share my favorites, and it's interesting that you mentioned the Sedgwick bridle, which I've never worn, but it reminds me of one of my two favorites is I really love the Align Latigo. It's not used often enough, I think. I think it's your least appreciated leather. Align Latigo and just Latigo Classic, but Align Latigo is different enough to where I think it should almost have like a different name. That doesn't have Latigo in it. But the Align Latigo is super firm, but as it heats up, becomes soft. And similar to Chrome Excel or Cordovan, it just requires a little bit of wear. But it's invincible. I've been wearing it as a belt. I've been wearing it as an Apple Watch band. I'll work out and go in the shower with this thing, and it's invincible. I've been purposefully trying to go hard on the Align Latigo, and it's just, you can't beat it. And then the belt weight thickness for a watch band, I think, is makes you feel like a tough guy. But the deeper favorite that I will share from Nick that you cannot buy any longer is my all-time favorite was the glazed whaler you used to do, Nick. And there was a specific color that was a blue glazed whaler, which was specifically steer hide shoulders. So you would do it, I believe you only did it as double shoulders. And I loved the texture of that, and I loved the color of that blue. But now recently you've started making the new bison stuff that is reminiscent of that. And I think I've ordered the blue color before in this new bison that resembles the glazed whaler well enough. I kind of wish it had, the glazed whaler had like more of that paraffin type of wax on the tops. That I liked a little bit more. So maybe we can talk about doing a variation on the bison stuff you're doing.
Yeah, that was a shrunken, I think we did that. That was actually just regular bovine shoulders mostly. And that was a shrunken, we would shrink that pre-retan, so in the blue. So we would shrink that all the way at the very beginning. So the pattern was really in there and very pronounced. And that was mostly we did that mostly for cowboy boots. And that blue color was cool. And it was like a navy color, but the way the pattern was, the valleys, like the areas between like the the pattern, which was totally random because it's like, it's shrinking however it wants to shrink, as a part of the tanning process. It was never embossed. It was lighter in color, so it was like a dark navy on top with like maybe like a lighter navy like in the valleys. And yeah, we can still make that.
Chris, your tanner, told me that they do not make the components that go into that specific product anymore. So if he could probably make an analog for it, but it would be slightly different.
Yeah, I mean, the other reason we stopped doing it is because just the quantity, like that has a whole different minimum order consideration to it. Because when we're shrinking that in the blue, our chrome tanning drums are large. So in order for that to be, commercially interesting, like
50,000 feet of it.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of pieces, and and then we end up with all these pieces, and are they all suitable for that? But now they've all been shrunken, so they have to be made into something that's shrunken. Like you don't have there's not a ton of options, because especially that could be happening. That could be happening without really fully knowing exactly what the shoulders look like, because we haven't been able to blue sort them yet. So there were a lot of considerations that went into us not making that product anymore, and then switching over to something like the Yellowstone, which we shrink at a different stage, and which is much better
just for clarity, that when I said the bison you're doing, I was referencing the Yellowstone.
Yeah, Yellowstone. Yellowstone's amazing, and that's a veg product, and the shrink pattern is much more compact, and it's much more uniform. So generally, I think more usable out there in the world, and also more repeatable. So things are always changing.
I'm working on some limited releases in my photo room here, and I happen to have some. I call it blonde. I don't even know what color you call this, but this is the Yellowstone. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. That's going to age it's going to be unbelievable.
It's a little bit of a
dark. It'll be dark brown.
It's a little bit of a slower burn, because I think of the finishes that you're using on the surface create a little bit of more of a barrier than like a naked veg. So it's
the waxes, yeah.
Right, but it's beautiful. I love it. And I'm gonna drill you, Nick. I hate the heavy finish pigment stuff you guys do, that I used to do when I was there. I mean, it was all customer driven, but to me, it's like boring and defeats the purpose of what Horween is about. And I hate it. So we would do it a lot on Latigo base usually, and just pigment over the top, because a clog maker really wanted a bright pink or something. And it's like, this is like, you should definitely not buy it. Sorry, Nick. Sorry, Horween Leather Company. Just buy it from somewhere else, honestly. It just
I agree with that. I think that we ended up getting that business because some of those people were like, oh, I want 500 feet of whatever lollipop or bubblegum pink or whatever. It's like, well, no one's gonna make that. And we're like, oh, we'll try it. Just maybe.
Other tanneries make that, and it's great.
Yeah, I know, but maybe not 500 feet of it in the way they want it. I'm saying, like, we have the flexibility, and our minimums were more friendly maybe when you were working on that stuff. But
yeah, for leather crafters out there, I was just perusing Rocky Mountain Leather sells a ton of different leather these days, different tanneries, and they have bright colors. You have to buy. It seems like they do a lot of cropped panels or cut parts. Like it seems like it's a little bit more difficult to buy a full hide or a full side, but they have a lot of interesting looks. Maybe even Wyatt, like if you're just looking for inspiration, just like Rocky Mountain has like a ton of different leathers, and a lot of them look really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when we first started, like even in 16, 17, and especially because we're out of China, we would basically work similar with like a Tannery row, but AA crack, right? Just because they had their warehouse full of nice leathers that we can use, and they're willing to ship you one hide or 6 hides, and so we lean on those guys quite a bit.
Yeah, It's interesting stuff. It's not Horween.
There's
what's
the
Horween?
Horween Shield
Yeah.
podcast all the time.
They're AA Crack is they're our agent in Northampton, so they have our stuff and they carry Stead, and I mean they're a long-standing leather merchant and sales company, so they know their stuff for sure.
When was the last time you guys did a podcast?
Last week.
Last week. Is it?
Yeah,
It had been pretty consistent.
Yeah, we were consistent for a while, and then we had a lot of stuff. I had a lot of stuff, and then Phil, it was just difficult. So we're getting back into the normal. We've got a couple episodes recorded, and then we'll do this one, and then we're gonna go back. We're gonna do that regular series that Phil was talking about, and that'll have Phil and I did sort of the intro to it, and we're gonna have John will be on one, and my dad will be on one, and Tom, John's dad actually, who still buys our hides, will be on one because he can talk about like the sourcing the raw material, and then we want to get on. Want to get in some other material suppliers, like the companies that make the finishes and the urethanes and all that.
Very
So
cool.
it'll be trying to get a few different takes on the whole thing, and yeah, maybe someone from Wilson will tell us what it's like to make sporting goods in various places in the world.
Oh, that'd be very cool. That's been a cusp of yours for how many years?
Wilson,
Yeah.
80 years. Yeah, long time.
Yeah, it's even longer.
I'm wearing a Wilson shirt today.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Wilson football.
That's
no,
wild.
that was my great grandfather developed that business in
Damn,
like 1940,
that's so wild.
or like
That's
just
so
in the late 40s, I guess. So maybe not quite 80 years, but
Yeah,
long
it's
time.
up there. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
super cool.
Do you want to share that story, Nick? Am I misremembering this? Like he was involved in the NFL and like somehow, how did they get? Did they develop the football for the NFL and just said you should use this?
Okay.
have a
This
story?
so I'll try to give the high level because my dad is much better at recounting the story than I am, because I'm just repeating it as I heard him tell it.
Well, neither of you were there.
300 or 400 times. But what was that?
I said neither of you were there.
Yeah, no, we weren't there. Yeah, so my great grandfather played football at Harvard when he went there and he played with his brother. And then when they were done, when they graduated there, they came back to Chicago and they played professionally for the Chicago Cardinals, and like old timey, with like leather helmets and stuff. When it was just on the radio and not on the TV and stuff. So they were playing that way, and they played under and assumed like a fake name. They played as the McMahon brothers because they didn't want their parents to know they were playing football like on the weekends. They were still like working. It was like, like they'd go to work and then on the weekends they would go play like professional football. It's like a little bit different than these days, I think. And so they did that for a while, and he played and coached at the same time as he was playing the team on the team. And then after that, he went and coached. Went back and coached the Harvard football team for a number of years. And when he was done with that, he had developed a bunch of connections, in the football world via playing and coaching and all that. And when he was back here talking with some of the people that were involved in the game still, they were saying that we think we can make a better ball, like the way the ball was, because the game was changing. It was smooth. First there was no forward passing. It was like almost like rugby in the beginning. Like it was not. And there's a really good Radiolab NPR podcast on like the sort of football and how it started. And the whole game was like, what can we do that's like not really cheating, but is like kind of cheating? Like they would paint, like they'd like sew pouches like in their jerseys and like hide the football and like run. And then like the next year, like they would change their rules and like all that stuff would be illegal. So there's like the rule book kept changing because they kept just like adding in these things. Like they'd paint like a football like on the front of their jersey, so like it looked like everybody was carrying the football. Like, oh, you can't do that anymore. So just like they kept changing the rules. So anyway, so the game was changing like appreciably, especially in those early stages of when it was becoming more organized, and they had it in their head that they could make a better football. And so they had, my great grandfather who was the leather guy, and then Wilson, which had a different name, which escapes me right now, is based in Chicago. So they got together with some people that were connected to the professional organization of football still, which had which wasn't the NFL yet because it was different divisions. But I have to look up when the NFL was officially started. But they so they started experimenting, and then they came up with this this football that was a different shape and a different leather and all these different parameters went into it, and they had the ability to make something and then try it out and then change it, and pretty cool, pretty interesting. Yeah, and then it's not changed that much, the product, in the last 60, 70 years, the way we make it. And it'd be interesting to talk to Wilson about how it's different for them. I'm sure they use a lot more, like the way the bladder goes in and everything is probably different with the way like the plastics and the vinyls have changed over the years. But
Let's get
that's how we got the football business. Yeah,
It's incredible.
yeah.
It's really cool.
I think about that story. I'm like, I mean, he sounds much more qualified than I do to develop and get new business. But I guess it's all relative.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to rewind back to Wyatt's visit to Stead. Do you want to give us some takeaways from what that was like?
Yeah, well, honestly, the day there at the actual tannery was only one full day, and so we flew into London and took the train up to York, and then finally to Leeds. So yeah, the whole trip in general, just a great time to go through. It's so simple to go, across the country there because of the trains, right? So just honestly, that just made the whole thing so enjoyable. Just the accessibility to do one thing, because we were only there for 3 or 4 days and to come back to Michigan. So it was a very quick trip. But yeah, the tannery itself, I was honestly surprised how big CFZ was. I mean, at the same time, right? They're also one of these boutique tanneries that, I mean, they're not producing just insane amount of volume in one particular hide or something, or one particular tannage. I would assume they're relatively similar. If we're looking at the leather industry as a whole, they're pretty similar to what you guys do on like a daily basis. As far as you have so many tannages going at one time and smaller quantities for different customers, and might have 10,000 going for this guy and 500 square foot for this guy, and just wildly different stuff. So very cool to see that. I think the property that we visited, they've been there for a very long time, and the buildings were, of course, very, very broken up. So when they're explaining it, of course, like, well, if you had to build a new one today, this is not how you would lay it out, but that's pretty much all this. That's how it always goes, right? So yeah, super interesting as far as how the flow went, the process, and yeah, I mean, they have a pretty wide range of what they do. I want to say it's only chrome and maybe a little bit of combination tan, but I would assume maybe a little combination tan on some of their full grain cast stuff. But yeah, what CFD's really good at is color too. I mean, they're very good at color. Swatch books come out, and there's absolutely, but I mean that's part of the suede business. I would assume is just you have to just be constantly developing new color, and meanwhile you might have 40 different shades of a red that's like. Production might be pretty similar there, but each season they have to keep coming out, and they do. Their colors are very, very good. So yeah, it's fun to go there. I mean, part of the reason I was there too was just to visit, but then also while I was there, it's like, hey, what do we have sitting around that is really cool? Kind of in one of the hides that we use, whether that's Rapello or Janus, a kudu. Do we have like half a pallet somewhere that's that a customer didn't pick up or something like that? And to kind of go through the archives, that's always a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun to do that. So overall, yeah, it was a great trip.
A little bit of color for you. Looks like CF Stead started producing leather in 1904, which is roughly the same time as Nick's family. But the building, they got you by 1 year. The building if this information is correct, 1823, which is like roughly when chrome tanning sort of became a thing. So I don't know. I don't know if they do veg, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was like one of the first chrome tanning tanneries. It's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and similar to a lot of the tanneries we work with, um, while there's a huge selection of tanneries out there um, that make great product. A tannery that can also kind of um, process our type of business, with the fluctuation and also not a consistent uh, cadence of orders, and then also the smaller quantities. There's not a lot of those, right? If you check all those boxes, it's a very finicky business for a tannery. Um, I'm sure you'd love to just get a run of 30,000 square foot in one color and keep it consistent. So yeah, it seems like these guys are fall into that category that they can do that, but they're also, I mean, that's what they're flexible, have a little bit smaller drums, and if they don't, um, yeah, I mean, the price is kind of what it is because not only volume, but the way that it's done, not changing things up, and the quality is there. But I mean, so much of that's driven by the volume too, right? It's just you almost have to make a special product if you're not producing a ton of volume.
You're kind of giving me an elegant segue into another topic I wanted to go over. So Nick and I are working on what we're calling the Manufacturer's Guide to Horween Leather. That will not be out yet at the time of this podcast being released. But we're trying to create exactly that, just a guide for people trying to make shoes, people trying to make wallets, people trying to make things out of leather for where to start. So maybe you can add a little bit more detail of what it's like, Wyatt, to work with the tanneries when you're talking about quantities. So I don't know if you want to give specific numbers or if Stead would even share that, but what's a minimum order size from Stead?
Yeah, I hate to get into the minimums there because I think honestly they change all the time, and it's kind of based on it's just what are you ordering and are other customers ordering it? Can we kind of jump on the coattails of this other brand that hey they're ordering black this year? I mean that's for any tannery, right? And so I think for the type of business that we have, um, being on the smaller side, I mean we're always going to be a little bit of a pain to any tannery we work with if we're not very careful, and so we're always going to fall beneath some minimums here and there. Um, and even if we're not, you still have to be kind of careful or just mindful of how you're ordering. Um, and over the years, I mean, I had kind of learned that before Grant Stone, but I mean, you're trying to partner with the tannery, and part of that is, well, here's what we'd like to order, but how can we adjust this, to make it work, especially in the early stages, because some tanneries let you sample, some don't. I mean that'd be kind of rare, but at the same time you have to go see them and everything else before they just start making samples for you, because even if you pay for them, they're like, this is still not worth our time if there's no program afterwards. And so yeah, I think it is very tricky. I mean you really have to go. Part of the thing I've always kind of leaned on a little bit is like, what is something you'd like to sell us? What are you currently making and that's really working well for you guys? What is something that you'd like to see on, for a program like ours, and that's feasible to be running, a few times a year at these quantities and things like that. And that really helps versus like, well, I want this grain structure. I mean, this thickness. I wanted to have pull up and oh yeah, here's some color swatches I'm gonna send to you. Please match it. That's like, okay, cool. If you're gonna place 10,000 square foot, yeah, sure, I'll do that for you. I'll sample one up for you. And you better do that like every quarter, by the way. And so yeah, if you can't do that, yeah, you got to work a little bit together and go like, hey, well, what can we do here to kind of make this a little more feasible for you guys? And at the same time, too, if you push too hard down one direction, if the tannery's not comfortable with it, there it may also be something that they are going to be like, hey, well, we could have these inconsistencies and things like that because we're kind of doing something specific to what you want versus maybe their core competence or something. So kind of always a firm believer as well, going like, well, what do you guys really like making, good at making, and what does that look like? And then maybe if we can change something here or there, we do that occasionally. But again, I mean, you have to place good size orders consistently because a lot of times they will say, well, that's fine, go ahead and do 500 square foot. But a year later, it's like, okay, guys, now it's time. Okay, Grantstone, let's we can't really, we have a new minimum for you. Like this is, we can't just keep doing this at this state. Well, 2 years later, oh, can we do another 300 square foot? Like, yeah, it's just very, very difficult. So, because I think a lot of times these are difficult businesses. So even if they can make it, it's like, yeah, but does it make sense? Does it make sense? And then if you ask too much out of it, or just try to change the product too much, I think that's risky as well. Because honestly, definitely seen other programs as well outside of ours. They're larger numbers as far as quantity. It's pretty complicated when the leather gets there and it's not what either side wanted or needed. That's a pretty tough position to be in, and a lot of times those are custom tanges to a certain extent. I'm sure that the brands, they try to help come up with, but only the tannery is really able to put that together and make an end product, but also color everything else if they make it and it's a custom color for you, which we have a lot of those. If they make an extra 200 square foot, well, you just got to take it. We're not going to be like, well, you're going to hold it to like, well, we can't give this to anyone else, so you're going to take it. Like we're already making you a custom color, and there's a little bit of overage. Yeah, you just have to take it, type of thing. So yeah, I think it's a little bit more of that. It's kind of, instead of asking the tannery like, hey, can you do this for me? It's like, well, what do you guys do? What would you like to see? And then also, this is kind of what we're thinking, type of deal. But it truly is. I think the
I have an example if it's, and I'm not going to tell you who it's for, and I'm not going to show you a better picture, but you can see that purple.
I like it. That. It's a good color.
That was at the measuring machine when I walked in today. So that is a custom color.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And we're not going to, I'm not even like, I don't even, it's not even out. So I'm not even going to tell you like what customer it's for yet. Cause it's like not, but yeah, so like that'd be a tough one because not only do we not want to like sell it to someone else that could use it in the same product, but it's purple. It's very purple.
It's very difficult.
It's good, great. It turned out great though. It's going to be. You'll probably see that in. It's probably I can never remember fall, maybe in the fall or spring, even spring next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's violet. Very cool.
It had a different, like some crazy color. It was probably some Pantone color name actually.
Yeah,
sure.
GPX0145.
Yeah,
I remember those colors.
Royal tulip, like something.
Well, the one other thing I'd like, add to all that stuff with the volume and everything else is just, I have seen programs that are, they're a little bit more, they're fine tuned compared to kind of like what we do with Grantstone as far as the volume, the quantities, the relationship, the buys. They're so consistent, and they're larger numbers, and so you also have that, which is a whole different world, because things are coming in, they're measuring thicknesses, they're kind of going through every little aspect of it, and if the color doesn't match 100%, there's a lot there. There's not too many options, but usually none of them are great, and so it's just a completely different program that is so tricky, where I think at the same time, if you're using leather like Horween and tanneries that are kind of comparable in that price range, it seems like it's a little bit more of, as a factory especially, you want to at least express to the tanner like, hey, we understand there's going to be color variation and things. Whether it's suedes or chrome excel, whatever. Over the, I don't know, 14 years of ordering chrome excel or something like that, of course you're using different color ranges and everything else. And so it's like kind of trying to be understanding and at the same time, just kind of knowing what that's going to look like. I would assume that goes a long way for a tannery, because honestly, at the same time, they can just tell you like, yeah, I don't, this probably isn't working out. It's
Yeah.
just not worth the risk for the
No,
tannery.
the reasonable flexibility I think is good. I mean, it's our job to make it as close to exactly the same as every time. It's like a running joke in the building that Phil will know, or it's like the color will come out, because a lot of times it'll come out and the color every time, always the color needs to be adjusted in finishing. It never comes out exactly the same out of from when it's wet to when it's dry. It's never the same color from lot to lot. Always the adjustment's always a little different, but the color will come out and it'll be wildly different sometimes. And it's the same dye. We put the same dye in, and the dye came and the color came out different. It's like, well, I mean, something is different. Like something happened that's different, because it's 7 shades darker. So like either like you guys like maybe put like a little extra dye in, or like maybe you didn't put enough in last time, or like something. But
the hide's a little different.
Yeah, the weight's different, or it's the hides, maybe they dried out, they sat over the weekend, and there's a billion different variables, and that's our job to manage. But yeah, some reasonable flexibility in color is good, because we are trying to make it as exactly the same every time as we can. Like we're without without painting the product, because we're not going to do that either.
I think what you're doing, Wyatt, is very wise. Asking the tanneries, what do you want to sell? What's your core? Yeah, congratulations on being a young wise man. But it makes a lot of sense I mean, just having worked at Horween, I can tell people that is a pro tip. Like, if you're trying to start something, call John Culleton, call somebody at the tannery, call Tannery Row, and say like, here's what I'm making. What do you recommend? And let them basically tell you what to do. And that's how you're going to get off the ground. And then as you grow it, you can do some other fun stuff. But the second pro tip that maybe you can get some knowledge from this, Wyatt. What I'm doing at Ashland, we're smaller than you guys, and our patterns are smaller, so we use less leather. But what I'm doing now, my directive for all leather buying is we're buying full mills. And the reason we're doing that is, sure, you get a full mill price, but that's not even the reason. The real reason is the consistency. So if I'm buying brown cypress or English tan Dublin that we do a lot of, I'm going to spend the cash and eat the cash flow issues by just buying that full drum, because it will cost me less money than having to reshoot all the photos and having upset customers. It makes more sense for me to spend full drum worth of leather than to buy 500 feet at a time. So we'll buy 2,500 instead, which sucks, but it really kind of is beneficial for us in the end.
Well, it's good too, because the next time you order it, you've ordered now at a more commercially repeatable quantity. So by ordering the larger quantity, the next time you order it, it will be closer in color, or be the same color, or have a better chance of being exactly the same color as what you ordered last time. Whereas if you're ordering 250 feet or 500 feet, or a smaller quantity, like those are smaller drums,
right?
And it's like the way that the action and the take up, and like there's a reason that things get run in 2,000 foot chunks. It's because it's reasonably flexible in terms of the quantity. I know it sounds like a lot, but it's reasonably flexible in terms of the quantity. But also, we get good consistency out of it, and the product, ends up performing well. And it's like, the numbers aren't totally random.
Yeah, and I feel like, to kind of add to the, even if the tannery is not necessarily telling you what to order, but I think kind of knowing what their core competence is, and then kind of 2 examples of things that have happened in the past that are kind of random, but that happen if you do have like a larger conversation with them. It's like, hey, we make this article, love the sample, love everything about it. Hey, we make this, but we're going to do it in this thickness. It comes in, and we have an issue with it. And then lo and behold, you reach out to Tannery like, well, well, usually because we do it in this thickness, and then you want us to split it to this one, and so actually it has this negative effect, or we just don't know because it's just this isn't really how we usually make this or something. It's like good to know, good to know, and that's kind of something that eventually then you'll start asking like, well, hey, if we do it in this, do you see that is that kind of reasonable to make this in 1.8 2.0, or is it just not a good weight for this particular article, things like that, or another one, kind of color matching something, trying to do a color. One specific time in my head is a lighter color, and after a couple runs of this, each time came in wildly different. It's like, okay, we see there's some differences here. Can we dial this in going forward? And there's like, well, actually, this is a color we usually don't do because honestly, with this tannage, we just can't achieve this hue. And it's like, again, thank you for telling me now, and we just won't do this one. We'll just stick to a different color for this tannage or whatever. And so I think sometimes if you come in a little bit too hot, going, hey, this is exactly what we want, they'll try. A tanner will try to do it sometimes, but if it doesn't work, and it might work one time, and but to do it repetitively or whatever else, you just never really know until I guess you do it. But so that's like the one thing I feel like happens a little bit if you kind of come in wanting a specific tannage, weight, color, the whole deal, effect, whatever that is, whether you're shrinking it or whatever's going on. But have to have that bigger conversation. Go, hey, do you guys foresee any issue with this? Especially if it's a little bit of a smaller program. But
it's pretty smart. Although I will give you a quick counterpoint, because I've seen with Nick specifically, some of Nick's customers have shown up and said, hey, here's a swatch, or here's a thing I like. This is my reference and I really like this. Can you come up with, like, develop this with me? And I've seen Nick come up with some it's not going to be one-to-one exactly the same, but it's actually oftentimes better. So if you give the tannery, this is another pro tip, if you give them some reference or some inspiration and say, give me your version of this, it's probably going to be better than what you imagine. I'm thinking of a shot jacket that you came up with the Luxe leather that way, Nick.
Yeah, the more specifics, the better, because then we can say like, oh yeah, we can try something, or like, here's what our version would look like. Yeah, we did that. We got the lid of a guitar case from Viberg one time, and we matched. It was like, I don't know how old the guitar case was, from the 60s maybe, and it was just the lid, and it was all jacked up, but it had like this shrunken pattern on it, and we ended up developing a product around that, which we're not really making anymore, but it ended up.
That's called Woodstock, and that happens to be my employee's favorite leather that you make, and he has some stuff. You didn't make much of it because I was there.
No, it's cool though. It's really cool.
It's his favorite leather.
Yeah, we should maybe we'll sample some stuff. Maybe we'll bring some. It's I think it's similar enough to Yosemite right now, or Yellowstone, that maybe it doesn't quite fit in the mix, but yeah, Viz made some boots out of it. It was cool.
But yeah, I just to Wyatt's point, because I think Wyatt is right, but also you should try. Like if you are a brand that has a vision for something, it makes sense to have the conversation at least. Like, I really like this. And then Nick or whoever at Horween or any tannery will tell you, yeah, we have something, we can develop that. Or like, yeah, that's kind of not what we do. And they'll work with you on it.
100%. It seems like it's all program based, right? It's all kind of program based. And I would say less than half of our leathers are something that's made up, whether that's color or tannage or something that's adjusted specifically for our program. So it's like kind of picking and choosing which ones to kind of use, like core stuff versus let's have some fun with it. And also it's nice to have someone who's a little bit removed from the manufacturing side sometimes, who's just a little bit more of a, hey, let's try to do this, something completely off the wall, because maybe only 10% of those ideas stick, but it kind of pushes, someone like myself, I have to kind of push myself to kind of do that and not go like, well, that could create this problem or that could create this problem. you tend to be on the more conservative side when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah,
Meanwhile,
I get
my
that.
friends just like, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this leather? Why don't you send them this? I'm just like, yeah, we'll do that one day. Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah,
So
but
are you pushing a direction in terms of looks right now, Wyatt? Because I'm noticing a lot of texture, especially with this Skaloon drop. Are you feeling like customers are into textures right now?
honestly, I don't think they are. I've never had anything to sell in our. I mean, we just have such a small sample size of when it comes to like data on sales for specific leathers. But I think for what we do, there is a range of what you can do, and so naturally, then you start to get into some more fun tannages and things, and you have a customer who loves it. We've done a lot of Scotch grains in the past. We've done pebble grains, um, but there is a reason they're not in our core program, just because it's not something that we can keep going, or it's not feasible to just continue every season. But it's probably crucial to our program to continue doing things like the two you just mentioned, and so we try to do that every quarter or so to keep something fun, for someone who is like, well, I have the basic full grain and a cat and a suede or whatever, but I would like to have something that's a little bit different. Um, so, and also I think that's what kind of draws people in, maybe their interest as well, but then maybe they end up buying a black full grain, plain to boot. But um, so yeah,
Absolutely.
trying to kind of balance those two, try to have fun with it. It also keeps us engaged too, um, because that is the kind of the fun part, kind of making different things. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like people right now really like. I mean, maybe it's always really like the smooth, like no prints, no shrink. Generally speaking, that's most popular. I would say like I've seen a good amount of interest in some of the Western texture stuff, but more interest in these natural shrinks, like you just did with the Gloon, for example. People seem to really like the draw and the bison texture, which is interesting. I wonder why people want the that as opposed to a print because I guess they're I don't know. It sucks as a brand because it's really difficult to get the same product every time. So they're almost always like a one of one, you know, for the natural
And
shrink.
honestly, I totally prefer it. I love doing. We've been doing a bison for a while, and it's it is can be a little tough to cut just because the grain itself. Some areas can be very very tight as far as the aesthetic of the shrinking, and some areas are much larger, like as the print goes. And so yeah, it does make it very very tricky, but people tend to like it. And honestly, too, I mean, half the time it's because it's the way you're describing it. You're using the word natural a lot instead of saying print. So they're just like, oh yeah, I'd love to try that because they're just looking at the way that it's being described. Uh, it's just being a natural product, and it just has this character naturally versus something that's being stamped on a something that's been stuffed or something. But um, yeah, not that one's better than the other, but I do think it while they are fun and some people kind of rant and rave about them. I mean, that's kind of an ongoing joke in our building is anytime we do something that's kind of like eye catching or kind of interesting or fun, that's all they talk about is like, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And it's like, well, because sold like 6 pair of those, and so I'd love to do them again, but until the tannery has 3 hides laying around, um, it's a little more difficult. So we'll continue doing things like that, but to do them continuously and always offer something that is a very very fringe product, and just I think generally speaking too, it's just these are just small numbers. I mean, even when we were in London, that was the first thing I said to my wife when we were there. We were only there for 2 days, but like walking around, and obviously you're walking by. You spent time at Crockett and talking to guys at Evergreen and Trickers and Sanders, whatever, like all those shops, and you know, similar to New York, similar to Chicago. Spending a day or two there, I'm you only see a couple pairs of welted shoes, like even on the street, and that's in London. I was kind of like, of course, that is all very small sample dose of experience, and I'm sure the next person's like, I saw that's all people wear, and it's like, well, literally barely saw any. And it's still just this very very niche thing, right? So I think it's like you're talking about like less than 1% who will buy this stuff, And then within that 1%, of course, the heavy majority are going to be into like full grains. I mean, we still try to like get our customers to buy suede because they're like, well, isn't it delicate? You can't wear it outside if it's raining, right? It's like, you go through that whole thing, and that's just suede in general. So I think the prints and things they are fun and they're interesting. And for someone who really knows their stuff, they really find it interesting. But for most people, don't even look at it. Like they don't even look at it.
Are there any looks?
But that's more dress stuff.
Sure.
More dressed, or like business casual welted, but like cowboy boots, another world, right? And they'll sell 500,000 pairs of them, but another world. But yeah, for what we do, I should say. Yeah.
Are there any looks or vibes you're trying to push into the world that don't exist yet?
Specifically, I would just say more of silhouettes of loafers and shoes, and just trying to not follow the sales trend too much, because I think, in our recent experience, boots had a couple of strong years, but also, we're trying to bring back a handful of shoe patterns that we basically stopped and never even commercialized, just because boots became the focus there for a little while, and we can only carry so many styles at once. So I think kind of reintroducing, like we have a short wing, we've never made production. We have a perf cap toe shoe that sampled for years, never put in production. 2 different loafers, one's a Venetian, had for 3 years, never put in production. So things like that, I think we'll probably try to steer a little bit more towards those things going forward, which I really do think are, I mean, you go into these stores and see there's very few of those business casual styles being made anymore. Even in the middle of London, there's certain things that are selling well, and then there it is. It's like a non-welted, flexible loafer with a non-leather sole, unlined, sitting at a brand you would never think in a million years they'd make that shoe, and it is in the center of the shop. Because it's springtime or something like that, and may or whatever, just it's completely outside of what you would think is their core competence. So yeah, I think there's always going to be a little bit of kind of trying to stay aware of that stuff, but at the end of the day too, you kind of have to do what your factory or what your team is good at too, because that stuff will come and go. It'll come and go, so we don't want to follow too much, and kind of be misled or something like that. So yeah, if anything, it just might be a little bit of a move towards a healthier balance of shoes and loafers versus boots.
Nice. What about you, Nick? Are you trying to push anything into the world?
Not specifically. I think that, on our side, we're looking at more just sort of simplifying things a little bit, because we make so many different things. So I'm actually trying to pull some things out of the world and just focus in on the things that that we're that our core business. Like there's this Phil, my dad, gave us both this like 80-20 book, and like you making sure that you're spending the right amount of time on the things that are the right percentage of the business, not like losing your mind over making 200 feet of pink that you're never ever going to make again. So it's more like that in my brain right now. But I think that once we go through that exercise, that we'll have freed up all of this brain space, this bandwidth, to do some things that I think are more in line with what we are good at. That's my hope, at least.
Oh man, I'm bummed out. I was going to send you this pink swatch from a guitar case and have you develop this for us. So, but maybe
you better do it. You better do it quick. You better do it quick. Yeah.
Better do it quick.
But we're idiots. We like the challenge too. We like to see if we can make something like that. And it's like we got the guitar case. Like, it's an interesting customer and it's a cool idea, and it's like let's try it. And we probably, we're probably lucky if we even broke even on it based on the amount of time it took to develop it and then how much we actually made. But
yeah,
it is a tough balance.
It's tricky.
Yeah.
So because it's funny that your dad suggests I've read that book and I liked it, but it's funny too because it's almost like he should reread it. And Skip, if you're listening, I apologize for being so crude. But like every time I show up to the tannery, there's some new leather that he's got. So he's like he's the madman, you know.
Yeah. I kind of felt I felt like 80% of the information should have been in the first 20% of the book, and then when it wasn't, I decided to stop reading it. It's a high level joke.
Author should have listened to their own advice.
Taking his own advice.
That's a good book. I think it's called the 80-20 CEO.
Yeah.
That'd be a great review
Read
to
80%
leave on Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tore
All right.
the last 80% of the book off and threw it in the garbage.
Cool. Speaking of 80-20, I think we've got 80% of the value done here. So let's
we're
call
good.
it.
Yeah. Thanks, Wyatt. This is great.
Yeah, that was really
No.
great, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great catching up.
And one
It
more
is.
thing is, I would like to, if Nick's open to it and you're open to it, Wyatt, next time we do our golf event, we'll try to rope Nick into it. And
Hell yes.
we could do it wherever you want. I'll pay for Nick's
He's shaking his head.
I mean, I'll walk around outside. I'll lose a bunch of golf balls.
Dude, I lost all of the golf balls when we went with the Grandstone guys. It doesn't matter. Let's just have fun.
Yeah.
I don't golf.
I gather that I think that I don't know how you are, but I guess your buddy
55. Yeah,
Josh is a pretty good golfer too, right? Maybe he can give me some tips.
Josh is
yeah.
an
Yeah.
amazing
I'm not the one to give advice. Yeah.
Wyatt is really good
It's the
too.
other guy.
My advice is always, or my move is always just swing harder. Like if it's not going well, just like swing much harder. Like make it into a workout so that you're sore the next day from playing golf.
Get something out of this. Yeah.
Which is the dumbest, like obviously the last thing that anyone needs to do. But
Well, this sounds like a good time.